Hi guys, I wanted to make you a quick video about this, I'll speak slower, sorry, about this program, project of Postcards to Space. I sent you guys a package that looks like this, and I wanted to go over a little bit to explain what this project, what the point of it is. So I'm gonna go page by page just to add a little info to it and kind of gives you a little more information about what we're doing. So title page is Postcards to Space, and what's interested is the theme for this particular year is how is agriculture changing in space. And the reason why I picked this particular theme is because it is very close to our cultures. We use the same theme in Peru because we are a huge, or at least the schools where I work at, is very agricultural in nature. And there's a lot of knowledge about agriculture, very much as it is where you are. And so there a lot of the information the children have, it's already in their minds, or they can use for this, it's already in their minds. So first it's a short letter welcoming, saying thank you for participating in our program. And then we go into what is called the basics. In the basics, I explained that what we're doing here is we're teaching children about space, about gravity, about agriculture in space. We're going to talk a little bit about the difficulties of doing agriculture in space, etc. Introduces the theme, which is how will agriculture change in space. It says here, students will discuss the idea of agriculture in space, understanding some basic facts about space and examining the differences these facts create to everyday agriculture. So for example, there's no gravity in space. That's one of the topics that we're going to discuss if we use this guide. The purpose of this guide is to, number one, introduce the project, and the other thing is to give the teachers some information about how to work with the children. Like, for example, it talks about, there's an article that talks about, gravity. We'll go through it in a little bit. What's important is that we do this with children of P4 and above. I chose P4 because Blue Origin, the company that will take our postcards to space, what their interest is to make sure that we spread what they call STEM, science engineering. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to children globally. Actually, they do it for children in the United States. I've been asking them to do it with us, with our nonprofit, so we can give children in the remote places that we work at an opportunity to do the same. And so their interest is that there's a discussion about STEM with these children. And I think that younger children may not deliver the same in their postcards, and I don't want to run any risks with them. So it's for P4 and above. And okay, the activity, that's the next page, talks about the activity. It basically states that the teacher has to hold the class or a conversation with their students about space. So what is space? What is gravity? Discuss the fact that is there gravity? The question is there gravity in space or not? And what is gravity? What does gravity do? And then maybe why space, not maybe, but why is space important to us? And next, we're going to introduce agriculture into the conversation and why is agriculture important in space, followed by introducing the experiment. Our experiment in our case is to have our children discuss like what vegetables or what plants already grow in your environment, in your region. And so they may come up with some really good ideas as to what plant would they recommend that can be grown in space. I would say, I don't know, maybe jackfruit, because it can sustain multiple changes in weather, or I don't know. This is something for you guys to think about, or for the teachers to think about. And then talk about some of the difficulties. Some of the difficulties, for example, there is very little gravity, which means that to irrigate, to put water in these plants, or to water the plants, may be a little difficult because whatever water you put down is going to float away. So how do you maintain the water down? It could be a conversation for children to think about and put their ideas into the postcard. And finally, create your postcard. use the same context or the same type of postcard that we've used for all of our pen pal cycles, and use the one side to write their ideas, the other side to do some art. We'll go through a little bit in a second. The second part, or the next part, is what I call part one, is the teacher's aid. And here we go through a few, items in which I introduce some ideas that the teacher can talk to. It's not to read to the children, it's for the teacher to have ideas as to what should I talk about. Like, for example, this is what is space, and is the region that starts 100 kilometers from the surface of the Earth at a line the scientists call the Kármán line. Just some little factoids to help the teacher have this conversation. The next page says, what is gravity? And then I add some figures of, like, gravity on Earth is 9.8 meters per second square, which is the speed. The speed that an object comes down to Earth. But the moon is 1.6, a lot less gravity, which is one of the reasons why when you see an astronaut walking on the moon, they're like floating really slowly, because they're not falling to Earth as fast as one would fall here on Earth at 9.8 meters per second. The moon is only 1.6, so much slower fall. So introduce some facts, some ideas for the teachers to discuss with the students. Question is, like, is there gravity in space? It's no gravity in space, question mark. And the fact is, like, that's incorrect, wrong. There is gravity in space. It's called microgravity. It's just so minute that it doesn't cause an object or a person or something floating to immediately move in the direction, of a mass. Like, if you're in space, you're affected by Earth microgravity. So if you're just floating, you could eventually just fall back to Earth. Or if you're far enough, you might actually start floating towards the sun because it's attracting you. But the number is so small that it's called microgravity. So just, I think to talk to kids about. And how do people get to space? This is a good page because here we introduce the existence of our partner, Blue Origin, and we introduce the vehicles that they use to travel to space, the rockets, and then there's the lunar module they're going to use for the moon in the next 2 years, I think. And so just a quick explanation of who they are. How do they get to space? They use these rockets. Next page is, why is space exploration important? And it lists a few reasons why, adventure and discovery being one of them. As humans, discovery and adventure is, I think, is part of our DNA. We're always adventuring, and it's part of a thing. And so as technology advances, we've found further and further away limits to what we can do. But what's important, I think, is that we can learn about the world, our own planet, and about space by being there in space. There are so many things that we can only see on Earth from space and learn about them. And so and one of the things here is protecting our planet is a very important reason why we go to space. There's a lot of information we use from space to study our own planet. Then the next place is part two, agriculture in space. This is where we introduce the actual theme of the experiment and why is agricultural important. And starts talking about the fact that we're going to be sending people to space for a long periods of time. Therefore, we need to figure out a way to give people sustainable food. Like, how do we feed them potatoes when they're in the moon for 6 months or so? They can't just eat cereal or dry fruit or dry food. What do astronauts eat in space is the next question. And so it goes through a few things. I think this page a lot has to do with, like, almost a fun talk about what do they eat now, leading to an introduction of, like, why do we need agriculture? Because we can't feed astronauts dry food forever. They need nutrients. Is space agriculture already a thing? And the answer is yes. They have been growing plants for now decades. One of the first plants that they grew in space are potatoes, and they've had a lot of success with potatoes. And what's interesting about potatoes is a very resilient plant. Not to give answers, but that could be one of the things that children can think about, is like, because I know you guys grow potatoes, that's a plant that could be recommended that already grows in your region. You guys know a lot about how much water do the plants in your region need, and so those are questions to ask, the conversations to have with the children. Next is the experiment. The experiment is sending the actual postcard to space, and so goes through question number one. The question is, have plants already been grown in space? The answer is yes, and there's a list of many plants here that have already grown. For example, bok choy, cotton, barrel clover, parsley, lettuce, tomatoes, spinach, broccoli, etc. There's a list here. Next is, what vegetables already grow in your region? It's a question for the group doing it. And this leads to understanding, what do we already have? So if I were in charge of picking a vegetable from my region, which one would that be? And can you think of reasons why? Next page is, let's talk about the difficulties of agriculture in space. This is where we go about the fact that microgravity exists, or there's not much gravity. And so watering a plant would be a little more difficult, or what we call irrigation will be a little more difficult. Temperatures are extreme in space. So how do you keep it? One thing that I discussed with our group in Peru was that you might need to introduce the idea of buildings or containers, or growing our plants indoors, where we can control the environmentals of the plant, instead of allowing it to go to hundreds of negative to hundreds of positive degrees, keep the same temperature and maintain a type of light, etc. That's the idea that this goes to difficulties. I misspelled that one. And then finally, it's make your postcard site one. And so same postcard model that we have been using for a long time. And one side has the name, etc. And the idea here is that their information is clear, because these postcards will come back to them, and they will be able to have in their hands a piece of us that has gone to space, orbited from outer space, and then come back to Earth. Not too many people can say they have that, and our children hopefully will become motivated and one day interested on following some technology career that might give them the opportunity to go to space and work from space and contribute to that world. And anyway, so their message on the other side as to the conclusions that they come up with in their experiments, as to what vegetable do they recommend that should go to space and why. And then on the other side, same concept, they're able to introduce their own art and relate it to what we've been talking about. It has to be space art. I think it says rather my space art. But just give them the freedom to be able to draw whatever they want that is related to the point. So it's already 13 minutes. I'm going to stop it right there so I can hopefully send it. I hope that gives you a little bit more idea of what we're trying to do. We're gonna do this now. One of the difficulties that we might run into is that I don't know what the schedule for the space company is. I don't know how quickly they can put that onto a rocket. But what I'm gonna do is, when they do, and when I get those postcards back, I will get them to you guys as soon as possible. And we'll chase those kids down if we have to. If we have a kid in P4, he might be in P5 when we find them, or her, P5, P6. Hopefully the kids in P7, we're able to somehow figure out where they are. But if this is successful and we're able to get interest from the parties that we're working with, we can do it again next year, earlier in the school year. Thank you so much for everything, guys. I really love you. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for our kids. We need hundreds of cards to send to hopefully thousands from Uganda. We have the opportunity, or at least 1,000, which is what we're printing, to send. And I'm pretty excited about it. I hope you're too. Bye.